undergraduate degree that you're planning to pursue immediately after school, or a master's degree or MBA. So how many of you want to do a UG? Meaning, so most of them are PG. Okay, got it. Okay, masters or MBA, right? How many India? How many outside? How many outside? Okay. So no problem. So that's fine, no problem. I think there's a case also as well as why you should pursue education outside. But the interesting thing is what will the employer look for? Degree to will get, right? But does the degree ensure success, right? Doesn't matter where you graduate from. And I'll tell you why, because I was heading a company which had a collaboration right across with IIM Ahmedabad. So my office was right in the IIM Ahmedabad campus for about 8 years. So I can tell you all, just as you heard about ISB, I can tell you the good, bad, the ugly of IIM Ahmedabad. But anyway, let's talk to that. Okay, so very quickly, my introduction. Like a good Gujarati, what's our destination land? US. So वो मैंने एक लंबा सा फ्लाइट ले लिया, and then there it was after a long stay there. I watched the movie Swadesh. Swadesh देखा ना? So I said, maybe Shah Rukh Khan can come back with me on Swadesh. So anyway, no.
So
I wanted to come back
for all of you to know.
I wanted to come back because I wanted to raise my children in India. So I have Karthan, who's also, by the way, studying at IMS for his further education. And again, very briefly on my career, I spent again maybe a decade of my life working in the financial services. So I was a stockbroker for about 10 years with sales and a whole lot of different roles. Worked with mutual fund managers and then with a company called Schwab. And then in the last maybe decade and a half, I said I will do just about anything. Teaching, training, consulting, मैं कभी नहीं करूँगा. Okay? Because I had seen my father was in that. But sometimes, and that's what I want to talk to you about. Sometimes life will take you where you resist the most. So you be very ready. You be careful. You be ready for that. Okay. So I folded into education in some way. And the last company that I worked for was a company called Duke Corporate Education, which had a collaboration with IIM Ahmedabad for a good 9-10 years. So I was the MD of that company, and we essentially delivered very high-end leadership programs for very senior executives, right? So you can think about one level down, Mr. Ambani, one level below Mr. Birla, and that was a great experience for me, where we had to design programs, but also we had to, so very experienced people, right? People who are already 25-30 years of experience. तो उसको आप क्या पढ़ाओगे? What will you tell a guy who's been a president, or who's been an SVP, who's been a CEO, who's been an MD, right? So that's the pool that we were dealing with. And a fantastic ringside view. I got to travel more than 30 countries and really looking for what does leadership mean. Okay? Now, in the process, I also learned what happens in that journey. So what you could be in the next 10, 15, 20 years from now, right? Okay? You're all, आपको बनना है ना, VP बनना है, MD बनना है, entrepreneur बनना है कि नहीं, right? So that's the journey. Very briefly, some of my hobbies. Adventure buff, so skydiving is something that I have to do, but बाकी जो अभी तक किया है वो है scuba diving. I am a certified paraglider, and also I read a lot. So वो आप करते हो ना? Please, I don't get the confidence.
Yes.
Reading करना चाहिए, right? Make sure that you read a lot. Okay. So let's see here. This is the book that I wrote, as Udval mentioned, in 2021. It is on your generation. It's called Target Gen Z. And you can see the two Gen Z boys. On the left is Kapil, my son. On the right is my nephew, Rohan, who is, by the way, in the US now, studying his undergraduate. And essentially the book is all about what are the companies grappling with when it comes to hiring young talent. Okay? There is so much data out there now. Just I think about a month back, they said that in India, every 1 out of 5 Gen Z will quit their job in the first year. Okay? Now, I don't know if that makes you happy or sad or your parents are worried, but that's the fact. क्यों हो रहा है, कैसे, why it's happening, we'll go through that. And what do the employers look for? What is it that the employers have to do? They have to do something, but what do you have to do from your perspective, right? So we'll talk to that. So The book is essentially my ringside view of some 20 years of leadership consulting of how do young talent gets groomed into a system. Okay. I also run a fairly I also run a fairly popular podcast called Working with Gen Z. Check it out. It's rated at the top 5 podcasts in the world for Gen Z category. So essentially, I bring all the different dimensions of the Gen Z world. And again, all of this, the motivation was because I have a Gen Z boy. I have a nephew who is a Gen Z. I always wonder as a parent, kya ho raha hai? I want to put the phone down. Despite me telling him, so wo sab kuch jo every parent is grappling with, right? So anyway, check that out. These are all the different ways in which you can see the dimensions of the Gen Z. Okay, so I suspect many of you are either. How many of you are want to pursue engineering in masters? आगे जाके या फिर MBA? Have you thought through आगे masters कैसे क्या करना है? MBA? What about others?
Yes, MBA.
MBA. सबको MBA करना है? अरे पक्का बात है. गुजरात है, टाइट है, और business टाइट है. Okay. So why I am asking this is because what skills do you need? What are the skills? As I said, degree has one place, but degree itself doesn't guarantee you anything. I mean, it's a foot in the door. Okay, let's accept that. And I can tell you many stories of what companies are doing. Okay, so let's go through that. And so what I want to talk through today is that, beyond the degree, what is it that will separate you when you join a firm? Okay, so just as you're prepping to go inside a college, what do you need to do to get into on the employer side, right? Or if you want to be an entrepreneur, even more, you have more work to do. Okay, you have to know yourself better, you will have to recruit people, so that's even more harder journey. Okay? So let's go through that. Okay, so what I have done is essentially I take the next 25-30 minutes. This is a topic I can talk very extensively. This is something that a lot of it is even applicable for very senior people. Okay, so I will go through a bouquet of skills. It's a very general skill, but hopefully it's going to make sense to you. And please ask questions along the way. Okay. So the first thing that I am saying is that understand that the definition of a career is changing. What do you feel is the definition of a career? मतलब आपके हिसाब में how do you see yourself? आपने MBA degree ले लिया from a top college or whichever college that you have in mind. In your mind, how will your career span out? 10, 15, 20, 30 years आप कैसे देखते हो? What is your vision of how that career would be like? Most of you I am assuming are in your 20s, correct? Mid-20s, 20, 25, that age range. So how do you see your path ahead? आगे आप कैसे देखते हो? आप शायद सोचा नहीं है इतना आगे की है, मैं इतना आगे का तो मैं अभी सोच नहीं रहा हूँ, but just आप बताओ, looking at your parents, looking at your peers, looking at your seniors, आपके दिमाग में क्या आता है? कि 10 साल काम करूँगा, 20 साल काम करूँगा, 30 साल काम करूँगा. What is in your mind?
Easy money.
Yes. In fact, lot of employers, I can tell you story after story after story. तो सारा जो stereotype Gen Y या millennials का होता है कि yes, entitled, they are this, they are that. Gen Z का tag तो और भी बुरा है. Right or wrong, but I'll tell you, and I can tell you because I am seeing every company crying, saying कि कैसे इनको पकड़े. I mean, I know partners in US, they are begging, pleading, they won't come to work because this whole work from home का debate जो हो चुका है, right? So many things. Yes, yours means.
So in my family specifically, like I have my uncle who is CBO in Paytm, Chief Business Officer.
Sure.
So maybe that is the kind of trajectory that I am following. Or my grandfather, he was like board of director.
Right.
Those kind of positions he has held.
ठीक है.
So that is, I would like to follow in those footsteps.
Okay, lovely. So again, please remember, do not chase a title. Okay, I can tell you stories where I have had clients जो इंडिया में 10 साल में VP बनता है, वही आदमी UK में 20 साल में बनता है, but the guy in India doesn't stay in that position long simply because he's not got the requisite experience, but because there is such a dearth of talent in India, good talent in India, that they have no choice but to put a guy and become a VP at 10 years. But the same guy cannot be put in a global role. Because they not handle large teams, they not handle conflicts, they are not very culturally savvy, right? जो हमारा जो Indian way of doing things है, मैं आता हूँ meeting है ये है वो, that doesn't work everywhere, right? So let's look at that. So the first thing we are saying is be agile in learning. Now this is like telling you the most obvious thing. अरे भाई मैं पढ़ने को जा रहा हूँ, मुझे मालूम है, मुझे पढ़ना है, अच्छा पढ़ना है, मुझे अच्छे grades लाना है, but how does this fit into the career stream? So let's take a look. Now we've all heard about क्या चल रहा है आजकल, what's the big debate? आजकल सब लोग क्या कर रहे हैं? जवाब दी वहाँ AI, thank you. So AI देखो, AI can be a good resource, but I hope you are not overly dependent on AI, are you? ऐसे के लिए भी आप ChatGPT के लिए जाओगे, किसी को ईमेल लिखना है, उसका मुझे ड्राफ्ट दे दो, उसके लिए भी ChatGPT के लिए जाओगे, so it is killing your thinking. There is an upside to technology, but there is also a downside. Now, without going into that, I just want to show you the amount of change that has happened in technology. Right? I think you're the digital native, so you know this better than anybody else. And what you see in this slide is very simply that what the amount of change that happened in the last century from 1750 to 1850 or यहाँ से लेकर 1950, and you just see there is an exponential curve from the last century, right? And we are not even done. So what they are saying in down below are basically life expectancy. यहाँ पे आप देख रहे हो, you see 37 was the average life expectancy, 40. Right now the life expectancy is about 69 for our generation now here, expected to go 90. So you can imagine that just how the linear change that's going to happen. That is happening in technology, right? Now, what does it actually mean when it comes to okay, let's go. So let's start there. Oops. You need to yeah, okay. Let's do one more. Okay, so this is very important, friends. Take a look at this. On the right is the impact of what technology is doing from a talent perspective, right? So everybody has heard the word Industry 4.0?
Yes.
Somebody सुना है? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah. So essentially it's telling you that how we've graduated from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, right? So from 1 it was engine, basic skills were physical labor, engineering, then standardization happened. 3.0, lot of the work that is being done is still 3.0, which is where you need science, technology, engineering and math as a skill. But 4.0 is where what you see at the cusp of what is happening now, right, with AI and so on. So what does it mean for the talent? So for you have at least 4 decades or maybe 5 to 6 decades of career ahead of you, minimum 4 decades. I would say at least 6 decades, okay, with all that, how the world has changed and everything else. So what it means for talent is that you need to be agile in learning, which means that आपने जो पढ़ा है, you cannot take the view कि मेरे पास engineering का degree है, मेरे को problem solving का एक project दो, वरना I won't work. You see, if you look at COVID as an example, what has COVID taught us? If you are a pharma graduate coming out in 2020, what skills would you bring out in the marketplace? You will say that I am very good, I know how to make a good vaccine. Correct? Pharma में आप चाहते हो वो पढ़ते हो, but is that sufficient? Would that have been sufficient considering the problem that we all face? No, correct? Because that was really not the solution that the world or everybody was looking for. The vaccine itself actually takes 7 to 8 years. उसको हमने short करके 2 साल किया, फिर उसको 1 साल में कर दिया. But that was not even one half of the solution. We had to think about how to price it, we had to think about who gets it, we had to think about how to ship it, we had to think about the communication strategy. So सारा कुछ है. Now you cannot take the view if you are a pharma graduate कि मैंने मेरा काम कर दिया बस अभी मेरे को तो promotion मिलेगा, right? What it means is that you have to have a very transdisciplinary lens of looking at things. which means that you have to proactively show the curiosity of wanting to know other things, because the nature of problems are becoming very, very complex, right? And so no pharma graduate can say that, you know, my job ends by making a good vaccine. It's the people who, and we saw that, right, in wave 2. कि shipping नहीं हो रहा था, right? Our entire logistical system we saw where the cracks fell. तो सारा कुछ दिख गया, right? So what it's saying is that the talent has to be very agile. What you know today, you may have to unlearn very quickly. Yes, sir.
Sir, here I would like to say for students, how is this relevant? I was being asked whether a techno-management role is a good thing or not. He's giving you the answer that a transdisciplinary thing is actually what will be the need in the future. So, आप लोगों के career choices के लिए ऐसे relevant है with data, with somebody who is doing the same research वो बता रहे हैं, ठीक है? So that's the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at the traditional career path, you can picture and you can think about your parents, or even say my parents, or let's say Ujjwal sir और मेरे parents in that generation, क्योंकि कैसा था कि भाई चलो 20-25 साल पढ़ाई की, फिर बाकी के 30 साल हम कोई एक जॉब में चले गए, और वो जो डिग्री मेरे पास थी उससे लेके I am going to ride for the next 30 years, and then around maybe mid 60s or so I will retire. Now the whole concept of pension तो वो चला ही गया है, but they just put it out there, and 65 was sort of the age of retirement, right? And what would happen at 67? You would die. So what is it saying? So that is the old formula. Okay. So वो जो है, that you could say that I could ride on that, but now what has happened is that your entire way of surviving in the corporate place is to keep learning. Right? And the number one thing that companies are struggling with today is how do I engage a person who has such a short attention span? That's the reality. I'm just telling you, I can quote 1,000 stories, right? So that is a burden on the employer, but that is equal burden on the Gen Z, right? If you take the view that I have met people, just last week I was in Bangalore where किसी ने बोला कि मैंने 5 साल में 5 jobs छोड़े हैं, and he was saying with such pride, and he is saying that I will listen to you and see that okay, if you have a good proposition, then I'll consider you. But the point is, what is it doing to your skill set? Are you getting any skill set in the process? Right? So I'm not suggesting that you be in a company for 30 years, 10 years. I'm not suggesting that, but I'm saying that how do you build sufficient skills, right? If you keep job hopping every 6 months, every year, you're not learning. And somewhere in your career, some point in your career, that will come through. When you have to lead a global team, they can see that this is an Indian guy, he's an Indian manager, इसको ठीक से नहीं आता है. Quantitative skills इसका बहुत अच्छा है, लेकिन बाकी सब चीजों में वो बहुत ढीला है. Right? You've heard that kind of a thing. ऐसा सुना है ना? Right? So this, what I'm saying is that this is very, very important. Now, here again, please keep in mind that if you think about an average career of 60-65, hopefully all of you, a lot of energy, right? आप 3 साल, 2 साल, 4 साल में बाहर निकलने वाले हो, right? अभी वो डिबेट चल रहा है, नारायण मूर्ति ने बताया 70 hours work करना चाहिए. All this trolling is happening, but the point is you will have to work hard to be different. Let's put that debate aside. But the reality of life is कि एक age आता है तब उतना काम आपसे होगा नहीं. So you will reach that stage around 50 के आसपास. I'm like fast forwarding 30 years out for you. But for your generation, that burnout point is much before. I want to feed that to you. You may disagree with me, but sadly, rightly, जो भी कहो, too many distractions. Your context is very different than the other generations. So what I am saying is that most of the people, there is something called the midlife crisis. For Gen Z, there is a term called the quarter life crisis. जो 50 में होता है वो 25 में होता है. So there is a lack of identity issue. कि अरे मैं ये सोचा था ये होगा, वो सोचा था ये होगा, मैं कहाँ करूँ, मेरा दोस्त तो ये कर रहा है, मैं ये नहीं कर रहा हूँ. So there is a sense of this, you feeling lost. Now why I am saying that at a stage, at a certain time in your career, you can ride it out, you can go up or you can go down. But just think about it, this could prepone in your case. Okay, so what you see the graph जो ऊपर जा रहा है वो शायद थोड़ा flat जल्दी हो सकता है. Right? Now the way to overcome that is to be very agile in learning. You will have to learn much more with the pace of how the change is happening. 40% of programming jobs बोला है कि चला ही जाएगा. सब कुछ AI करने वाला है. Whether you like it or not, वो होने वाला है. Right? So that's what they're saying. Now, the other thing you have to keep in mind is that a traditional career was a career where I did sales job, फिर मेरे को एक territory मिला, फिर मेरे को एक बड़ा territory मिला, फिर मेरे को और एक बड़ा territory मिला, फिर एक region मिला, फिर I went outside. The point is that traditional path is career is slowly going away. It's in fact gone. Most places you will probably, given all the context that you're living in, with the stress and mental well-being का इतना सारा बात हो रहा है, 3 साल के बाद you want to take a sabbatical, अरे I am burned out, तो फिर आप सोचेंगे अभी मैं क्या करूँ? Okay, then do I take another degree? What do I do? Right? So what you are thinking is a vertical rise. You may have to go horizontal. You may have to go downwards. In fact, you could go be going upward. So what it's saying is that, and therefore you also have to keep in mind that the nature of jobs is changing. So आपके मगज में वो चल गया कि भी engineering है तो मैं वो ही करूँगा. That is you are writing your obituary. Extinction होने वाला है आपका. Don't take that. The more adaptive you can be, the higher the chance for you to survive and succeed. And that's what this slide is showing. ठीक है? So the path to career is not traditional कि एक ही चीज को पकड़ के I will go for 30 years, right? Because you could be doing many things. And then there is the vertical, there is lateral you could do. Sometimes there will be a stage in your life you may have to go down, you may go exploratory up, so on and so forth, right? Okay. Now, another thing I want to mention very quickly without taking too much time is that the moment you have to learn something new, what happens? See, आपको GRE, GMAT सब कुछ करना है, आपको करना है कि check mark करना है, ये करेंगे आप. But आपको फिर ऐसा कुछ सीखना है where you probably don't have the curiosity, you probably don't know that ये करना पड़ेगा. But because there are 50 other guys around you who are competing with you, what will happen? You will give up on learning something new very quickly, which is what I would caution you to say don't do. See, because any learning journey, there is something called learning agility. कुछ भी आप नया सीखते हो तो शुरू में बहुत टफ होता है. That is the time when most people give up. But it is the time where you have to take a call that do I sustain that curve, and hopefully there is a turnaround. And I say this again to you because yours is the generation who wants everything quick now. And so I'm cautioning you. Okay, आपको भले अच्छा ना लगे, but I'm telling you, नहीं अच्छा लगा, अरे ये तो I want to give up. I want quicks because you put something online, आपको तुरंत feedback मिलता है. That's the frequency in which you've been growing up. But the world is not going to work that way. So why I show this is that whenever you are going to be learning something new, you will have to invest the time. You will have to do the boring. You will have to go backwards, in fact, a few steps before you go forward. So build that mental mindset that ये मेरे को थोड़ा उसमें घिसाना है. Make sense? मैं डरा नहीं रहा हूँ, but I hope are you agreeing with me? Okay. Okay. The other is building critical skills. What is critical skills? Critical skills का वो तो आपको जानना चाहिए because you all are going to take exam. I don't know GMAT में आता है उज्जवल, पता नहीं कहाँ मैंने तो एग्जाम लिया नहीं है, बहुत सालों हो गए. Critical thinking का क्या रहता है? What does critical thinking mean? Yes, trying to look at things with a fresh lens. This is very important, especially when you're managing teams. एक पूरा 20 साल 25 साल का एक लाइफ का एक्सपीरियंस आपके दिमाग में है, सबका है, right? All of us, I have a view of how I have grown up and how I see the world. Every single one of us, right? But how do you develop very objective thinking? It's very essential as a manager, as a boss, as an entrepreneur, right? So let's take a look very quickly. Okay, what do you see in this? क्या दिखता है? अच्छा. यहाँ पे क्या दिखता है? क्या दिखता है? There is a person playing an instrument. Okay. ठीक है. अच्छा, this one. Yeah. What about this one? Okay. So let's go back. अच्छा, यहाँ पे for those who could see the duck, could you see the rabbit? For those of you who could see the rabbit, could you see the duck? अच्छा. Here there are two images. There is a guy who is playing the instrument, and there is also a mask. Can you see the mask? एक mask जैसा है, like there is a mask, right? और ये वाला और भी tricky है थोड़ा. ये जो है यहाँ पे there is a young lady, but there is also an old lady, right? Okay. Now, why do I show this? The point of this is very simple. That your background plus your experiences brings the story. ठीक है? And why we say this? Because all of us have biases. How many of you say that मेरे पास I don't have any biases? कोई है या? We don't have the time, but I can prove that to you. So what I am showing here is that, again, without going too much into it, but this is simply saying that the brain likes to take a shortcut. The brain wants to go to the familiar. So we have so much stimuli coming at us that every day you don't have the luxury to stop, analyze and so on, right? So here, which means that जो past में हुआ है उसको लेके I take a decision, which could be true in about 8 out of 10 things, but may not be true in all situations. But as you go up in your career, you need to objectively bring this. You also need to objectively bring this when you're grooming talent. Because if you are seeing things in one way, you start seeing the person who is just like you, and you start saying that, हाँ ये मेरे जैसा है तो इसको I promote this guy, not realizing what other is doing. So that becomes very important, especially when you're leading a very diverse team. Right? So that's very important. So that's what I'm saying. So here is a guy called Daniel Kahneman. He's written a book, who is a Nobel Prize winner. He basically says there are two ways of thinking. There is system 1, system 2. System 1 is when we take quick decisions. System 2 is when we take decisions slowly. We pause, we reflect, and we take decisions more objectively. Right? So if I were to ask you, कि यहाँ पे कौन सा बड़ा line है? I gave the answer. See, most of you when I ask the question would say that middle line is the longest line, but when in fact all are same. Okay, how many of you think that the world is a good place? नहीं? क्यों? शाम का न्यूज़ का चैनल देख लो, right? Lynching हो रहा है, ये हो रहा है, वो हो रहा है. अच्छा, how many people think that the world is a bad place? Everybody thinks. अच्छा, no good. Nobody feels that the world is a good place.
I mean, at least we are not getting bombed by other countries, so relatively it's peaceful.
ठीक है. अच्छा. So one of the biggest things that is very very important for you when you're making, and I give you my son's example, is on critical thinking. Is that how do you look at and this is a skill that I mentioned this. So when he graduated when he finished 10th, तो उसको he got very good marks, but उसको भी थोड़ा confusion था science, commerce, arts क्या लेना चाहिए. He was actually liking science, liked science, biology was one of his favorites. Math में भी he was quite good. Right? Business में भी काफी उसका he had a good curiosity there. So we said there is no pressure from us. जो लेना है ले लो, okay? And then he basically went around asking people क्या करना चाहिए. So for example, my uncle is a doctor. He's a brain surgeon. So of course doctors do well. So he said, that could be one potential career. Commerce, chartered accounting, because again he felt that I think I can actually clear a CA exam. With arts, my father was an arts major. He had traveled some 80 countries. So the more he was talking to people, the more confused he was getting. So हमने जाके प्रिंसिपल को पूछा कि क्या करना चाहिए हमारे तो कोई we are not imposing it on him. What's it? She said, have you told him the other side of the story? I said, what do you mean? So she said that in India how many engineers we have? We produce more engineers than US and China combined, but how many of our engineers are employable? It's a question. It's a serious question. If you want to become a chartered accountant, can you be a CA in your first attempt? Most people will take 4, 5, 6 attempts. आपको डॉक्टर बनना है, there is a minimum investment of 8 to 10 years of studying. So more he got to know the other side, no, right? 12 years of science education, फटाक से भूल जाते हैं, I don't want to do pursue. So why I am saying that? So again, why I am saying this is that when you think about developing critical skills thinking, you need to also see the other perspective. Get into the habit of seeing that perspective. Very often when you start going into an environment, confirmation bias का मतलब यही हुआ कि मेरे my belief, I look at data which confirms my belief. तो बॉस ने आपको एक अच्छा टफ प्रोजेक्ट दिया तो आप क्या करोगे? फर्स्ट थिंग यू विल टॉक टू 4 फ्रेंड्स हु विल टेल यू कि यार ये प्रोजेक्ट मत लेना, अरे मर जाओगे यार, दिस इज सुसाइड, मत करना. You will talk to 4 people who will agree with you. Correct? Then in fact you should also take a view from maybe 3 other people who have a different view, and their counsel would be like, take this up. This may be your opportunity to shine. This may be an opportunity for you to learn. This may be an opportunity for you to do something different. तो वो आपको एक build करना है आपने, right? And sadly in your context it doesn't help with all the stuff that is happening on social media, right? अभी पूरा डिबेट जो चल रहा है यूएस में, राइट, विद द होल नैरेटिव्स लाइक इस शुड बी प्रो पैलेस्टाइन होना चाहिए, प्रो इजराइल होना चाहिए, एंड देयर इज अ सोशल मीडिया एक्सपर्ट सेइंग दैट हाफ ऑफ द पीपल ऑफ योर एज, 90% ऑफ पीपल, दे डोंट नो द डीपर इशू. किसी ने रील डाल दिया, रील को लाइक मिलते जा रहा है, दैट बिकम्स माय व्यू. सो यू नीड टू, you owe it to yourself to build that skill objectively. Because when you get to a senior level position, you have to show them the pro and the cons of everything. Right? So when I was leading a team here in India, right, everyone said कि भी अरे यार इंडिया में काम करना इतना complex है, हमारे यहाँ tax notices, everything, this, that, the other, सब कुछ, everything was happening, just doing business in India was tough. I said then if you wish, you look at the other companies who come, right? There is always a gestation period. So you have to have another perspective that I have to tell to my bosses in US and UK. But they only saw it one way. India equals bureaucracy. India equals long battle. So what I'm saying is that get into the habit of seeing the other perspective. Okay. Very quickly, this is a think of this as the typical or a general career ladder. So let's say you are coming out of MBA within 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, first 3-4 years क्या करोगे आप? You are simply an execution person. बॉस ने बोला ये करो, शाम को खत्म करके घर पे जाओ. That's it. That's your life for next 3, 4, 5 years. If you have the appetite then to say कि हाँ मुझे सॉफ्टवेयर करने से I want to now lead a team, then they will bring you to a table and say that okay, you know what, you will stop doing programming less, but you will start managing 6 other people like you underneath you. And that's not meant for everybody. There will be some people who will give that up very quickly. And again I say with your generation, because you're used to everything instantly, leading people takes a long time of skill. It's a skill that comes with time. कितने भी आप books पढ़ लो, case studies पढ़ लो, but that does not replace you doing it. आपके घर में अगर if you come from a business family, you would have seen it, right? 20 लोगों को पकड़ के रखना है, 20 लोगों को मोटिवेट करना है, 20 लोगों को, Ujjwal sir will probably agree, right? He is running an IMS center, right? How do you recruit good faculty? How do you hold on to them? How do you tell them? So that's not an easy job. So यहाँ पे क्या होता है कि when you come to that maybe 6-7 year mark, you are managing people. उसके बाद you are managing teams who are managing people, which means a majority of the time is gone in just handling things like conflict, influencing, collaboration, things like that. Doesn't matter आपके पास engineering का डिग्री है, CA हो, क्या हो, नहीं हो, design का है, you better get things done. सचिन तेंदुलकर कैप्टन बना तो क्या हो रहा था? हमेशा there was a debate, right? किसको भेजूं, पहले इसको bowling में भेजूं, right? Because he is not responsible for himself, he recruited 10 other guys, right? So that again is a skill. Again, lot of technical guys I know, they take a career path of 30-40 years, वही चीज में रहते and then they don't want to switch because they are very insular. If you wish to lead a team, you will need to build social skills. And post-COVID, in the Gen Z generation, even basic social skills have actually gone down. Sorry to say that. You may disagree with that, right? Because your best friend is that device. and not the person next to you. Correct? At least if you don't see it, I think others are seeing it. So hopefully you can see कि मेरे सामने एक आईना रखा है. Right? So again, what it means is that that is how the career path. So eventually, at some stage, that you will have to be good in just managing people, right? Okay. These are some of the comments that I have heard in my client work. Things like, "Half the day is gone. When she will come to work? Why can't we use technology more?" That's a young Gen Z saying that. Yeah. How do we motivate them? Work is not fun anymore. Okay. We are moving so slowly, it shouldn't be faster, right? There's another Gen Z saying that. Somebody is saying it's worked for 40 years, why do we have to change? We're all going to work, we're trying to get work done, but only if he puts his phone down. So these are real comments taken from clients. So there is a real generational conflict happening at the workplace right now. आप मानोगे या नहीं मानोगे, and I'm saying this even for the people who are going to be your bosses, basically millennials, like I'm from the generation X, the forgotten generation. कौन है ये? Everybody talks about Ys and Zs. But essentially, I show this to you to say that there are these 5 generations. There is one more called Gen Alpha, उसके पहले भी है, and most of the workplaces has at least 3 generation X, Y, and Z. These are the years in which they were born. Actually, in a lot of companies, even boomers are there, which means that, like, you can think of, we did work for Reliance, the average age of Reliance Petrochemicals का जो business is 68. Average age is 68. People in their 70s are working, right? Which means that 4 generations are there at the workplace. Okay. Now, why it matters? It matters because you see the demographic shift that is going to happen in your time. This is just an example. This I am showing you as an example. कि यहाँ पे आप देखो 50% of the population is boomers, then comes X, then comes Y, and then comes Z, which is you, which is a very small. It's a very small pie. इसको आप flip कर दो 10 साल आगे ले लो 6 साल की मैंने just for illustration को ऐसे showing you 6 से, but the entire pie this change. It means that a large part has become millennials, then comes Z's, X is shrinking, and so is the boomer. Which means what? You better take some interest in understanding how the millennials are motivated. It is not just their job to understand you, it is also just as much your job to understand them. In the next 40, 50 years, there is a very good chance you will have a boss who is from Gen X or a Y. तो उनका कोई पुराना मेथड है करने का या फिर आप ऐसा कुछ, तो that is because that's their context and your context is very different. The X generation has at least 15 years or 20 years of working. The Y generation, the millennial generation probably has 30 years. You have at least 60 years, 50 to 60 years of work life ahead of you. तो आप सोच लो कि who will be your bosses? Correct? So again, it shows that you will have to. So again, I give my example. Which generation? Parents from one generation, brothers from one generation, spouse from one generation. I work with advisors. I had a boss who was from very one generation. So everybody is looking at the world from their lens, right? Okay, so we'll skip to that. Okay, very quickly, discipline over motivation. This you may have seen. When you reach a stage in your career, let's say about 10, 12 या 15 year के आसपास, you would have hopefully gotten to a reasonably expertise in that field. Okay, which means that आप software programmer हो, आप chartered accountant हो, जो भी हो आपका domain है, right? You have built that expertise. It says generally it takes a decade. But उसके बाद क्या? So you go back to that ladder वाला slide, right? The technical skills take you only so far. 15 साल के बाद, 10 साल के बाद, you will have to be really good at these things. You will have to start influencing people. And you have seen and you have heard stories कि यार ये पढ़ने में तो बहुत average था, grades भी ठीक ठाक थे, okay था, लेकिन आज देखो किधर पहुंचे, because they're very good at the top. So you have to consciously invest in those skills, and that's like building a muscle. It is not like कुछ अंदर डाला, comment वापस आया, feedback आया. It's the hard grind. And there are people who have worked for 20-25 years और strategic thinking का कोई एक ounce भी नहीं होता है, because they are so stuck doing the daily operational thing. So आपको CEO बनना है, MD बनना है, आपको एक बड़ा entrepreneur बनना है, right? You have to think like what's the external trend. You cannot be so. Here what I am saying is that you get to know this early. Okay. Okay. So very quickly. Let's see, move forward. Yeah, and so how many of you recognize this guy? किसी को? Anybody? How many of you are interested in sports? कोई sports का है? Yeah? अच्छा, this I'll give you a clue. He swimming. अच्छा, what was the skill that I mentioned? I mentioned discipline over motivation. Right? This guy's name is Bob Bowman. He was the coach of Michael Phelps. Correct. Michael Phelps का कहानी क्या है?
He's still winning medals.
Well, he's not swimming anymore. But वो 16-17 साल का था. Again, a teenager who had gone rogue. I mean, went off track. काफी bad company जो भी कहो, right? And then what happened? This guy took him under his wings and he said that look, we can do this. What do you want? He said, I want to climb the highest mountain. I want to get there but nobody can touch me. Right? So 16 साल की उम्र में he was competing in his first Olympics. And he missed the bronze medal by I think a few seconds. Now normally when you compete in an Olympic kind of an event, what do most athletes do? If you have won, you celebrate, right? If you have not won, probably you say, okay, chalo, I'll come back and take a break and whatnot. Immediately next day itself, uska boss, this coach said, you are coming back in the pool. Right? And how many hours do you think this guy was swimming? पहले उसको 2 घंटे बोला, फिर 4 घंटे बोला, because it's not good enough. 6 hours. He was swimming for 6 hours a day. For how many days? 4, 5, 6, and 7. 6 hours for 7 days. He did that straight for 5 years. एक भी दिन उसने नहीं लिया बीच में छुट्टी. He said that was the darkest phase of my life, but I essentially swam 250 days more than my closest competitor, which is what makes me Michael Phelps. So why I am saying that, friends, is that see, a lot of times in your career you will come across people from different backgrounds, people who are but motivation doesn't last long. If you get into a habit of creating discipline in simple habits, that will take you a long way. So I always say that, grades को सारा debate जो है, that's fine. If you're intellectually, academically bright, absolutely great, right? But don't let that hold back. I have seen so many people, right, just with sheer grind, करते रहते, right, and then they just go so far, right? So discipline matters more, right? Okay, last 2 things. One is that you will have to be ready to work in a hybrid environment. I don't think that's an issue for Gen Z. There is all the data that says that that they want to work from home and also work from office, and there is data that says that. But the fact that if you have to work from home, that also has its own downsides. Okay, so just in case you are thinking कि हाँ अरे मजा आएगा, I can take a break, do that, but there is also a real downside to that. So I am saying from that lens. If you are an employer, I am saying how do you manage people in that context, okay? So now Satya Nadella has actually in his one talk he said going forward everybody will have to actually be ready to work in this kind of a situation, which means both synchronous, asynchronous, working together, remote. Synchronous, asynchronous क्या मतलब? Synchronous means like I am on a live Zoom call. Asynchronous is saying कि I could not attend that Zoom call, तो record करके it's on a shared server. Somebody will go retrieve it, I watch it afterwards. वो asynchronous हो गया. So both at work and at remote. That's just the new reality. So if you are thinking कि यार मेरे को boss से बात नहीं होता है, I cannot meet the boss, then that is also a reality you will have to accept. Okay, so just to let you know. Okay, last couple points and then we'll close. Building resilience, okay, right? Resilience कैसे बनाओगे? Is that a skill? आपको आगे आना है लाइफ में तो क्या चाहिए? What all do you need? Huh? So just look at it this way. You see all successful people. आप किसी को भी ले लो, whoever you admire, spiritual leader है, political leader है, किसी को भी ले लो, some CEO, right? Essentially, it matters is a matrix of two things. How do you handle stress and pressure of life, both external and internal? In your case, that internal pressure is equally and probably more relevant. External pressure is what? Client का, boss का, layoffs होने वाला है, वो सारा. Internal pressure भी रहता है. I want to exceed. The pressure that we put on ourselves, right? Which you don't realize. How do you manage that? And the other side is the energy. Are you having sufficient energy to manage that? So resilience in one simple say, just I'm very simplifying the whole, is that how do you be aware of the amount of energy that is required to manage through these pressures? काफी उसमें भी like right, there is so much being worked upon and talked upon, right? You take yoga, mindfulness, ये वो, talk to friends, so on so forth. But it is very essential. सारे जो हम कहानियाँ सुन रहे हैं, mental well-being for Gen Z's, mental well-being. You are in your 20s, right? Why so much talk about mental well-being? Because that's the context we are already facing. It's only going to get harder. So you figure out how to manage your energy, physical and mental. Energy axis talks about physical, mental. Stress talks about internal, external. A lot of people I say in the corporate is so much pressure. 20 साल के बाद burnt out. खत्म, बस हो गया. They're in their 30s, they look as if they're 50s, they're in their 40s, they look as if they're in their 60s. So if you wish to run long, you better put this as one of the things that you how do you manage energy and how do you manage pressure and stress. Yeah. Okay, last thing and then we'll close. Creating a network, right? You heard the term human capital? Have you heard the term social capital? Social capital क्या होता है? Yeah. What is your network like? Right? It is very important, especially when you go in the working world, to build a very, very solid network. So if you look at this is a traditional org structure, but then there is always an informal org structure that happens. Right? आप दोपहर को फ्राइडे शाम को क्रिकेट खेलते हो, सैटरडे को योगा करते हो, where people from all different walks are coming, right? Now, why is it important? Okay, when you look at this picture, what do you see? इसमें आपको क्या दिखता है? Yeah, it is nothing but a cluster of network, and the 3 or 4 people, T, SL, DA, DL, ये जो है, these are all, this tells you the traffic in the network. It means how dense it is. Think of it as a department which is critical to a company, and how many people are there in that, right? But there are these 3-4 people who are holding the whole network together. वो आपने सुना होगा, right? शायद कि यार मेरे को ये नहीं आता है, लेकिन उसको पूछो, वो he will get that answer. There are always these 5 people जो सबको किसी को जानते हैं, वो जो को लेके आते हैं. Now that is a very essential skill in the corporate world. Do not undermine that skill. When Sundar Pichai was looked at the guy for CEO, right? He was already offered a CEO's job in some other company which he declined. So the 2 founders, they basically said, okay, we want to look at the 10 flagship products of Google and where people have worked. उसका नाम था. He had worked in Maps, he had worked in Google Pay and all these things. वहाँ से सबका feedback लिया. He said he's technically very competent but a super people person also. So that became his feedback channel, which led to going up, right? So if you wish to move up, right, your network really helps, right? So I'm just saying that be conscious about it. What tends to happen, especially with technical roles, is that you become very siloed. मैं और मेरा ivory tower और मैं वो tower से कोई बाहर ही नहीं निकलता हूँ. Don't take that view. Go out, meet people, go out, get to know. Right? जैसे आप you are coming here, right? You will meet some people, right? So that is very essential. And do not see this as a very transactional kind of a skill. कि मैं 5 साल से जा रहा हूँ, 2 साल से जा रहा हूँ, कुछ मिल नहीं रहा है. When you least expect it, you will see that somebody will come and help you from a network. How many of you are on LinkedIn? कितने followers हैं आपके? Followers are not connections. Connections नहीं, followers. So now they are calling that as followers. Why I am saying this? Now is the time to build the brand. If you have a skill, उसको आप बनाओ और उसका एक brand बनाओ, right? Because when you do that, that is when you will get to know people, and that is how people will see you as an expert. So you are becoming part of a network. Okay? Okay. So I think we'll wrap up here, and you can see that when you remove the key people, you can see the network itself kind of vanishes, right? So ये ऐसा था, यहाँ से लेके it's actually kind of, you remove the 3 people, it's becoming 4 different islands. So when it comes to moving up in a system, your network helps you. The guy who found out YouTube, उसका क्या हुआ? He was out in a evening, you know, some social function. किसी दोस्त ने बोला, come and meet this PE guy. उसने बोला, अरे हाँ आप आ जाओ. So what your network? वहाँ से they made a pitch. They liked his idea. $1 billion they bought you. So I'm saying that जितना आप वो करोगे invest, उतना उसको वो निकलेगा उसमें से. You look at someone like Big B, right? How old is he? Big B का क्या age है? He is in his 80s, right? Still is going strong. So many of his contemporaries are kind of he's the sunset, right? He's worked from 70s, 80s, 90s, all the producers, directors, right? तो क्या है? Because not only is he good at what he's right, but उसका उनका जो network है. Anyway, so we'll stop here. I think and again I want to quickly say move from quantity to quality. So the number doesn't matter. I don't get impressed by the number. Oh, I have 5,000 connections. कौन है लेकिन? 5,000 में से कौन है? Right? So that matters. Okay? Superficial नहीं होना चाहिए, one way नहीं होना चाहिए. It's not about me. Like really make a network where you get to know people and you're making that. Okay. Lastly, this is just to show you. I'm sure you have seen this. You can see the skill sets in 25, 27, right? Creative thinking, digital literacy, all of that. Curiosity is a big one, right? Self-awareness, we spoke about that. Critical thinking, right? So again, you can see this list gets published every year by the World Economic Forum. तो आपको देखना चाहिए, देखते रहना चाहिए, right? Okay, so I'll stop here. Ujjwal, sorry, taken a little longer maybe. Any Q&A, anything I can answer?
Any questions for sir?
सबको डरा दिया क्या? Hopefully you saw that it was relevant, right? I hope that. So just be curious, right? जितना आप झुके रहोगे, आप लर्न करोगे, उतना आप जल्दी ऊपर जाओगे. I know it all का एटीट्यूड मत रखना. वो माइक्रोसॉफ्ट का स्टोरी मालूम है ना, right? माइक्रोसॉफ्ट के अभी तक 3 ही CEOs हुए हैं. Gates, Ballmer and this guy, Satya Nadella, right? So Satya Nadella का पूरा history में जाए, right? The first thing he said that I have to fix the culture. Everybody thought that I know it all. See, they missed the boat on telephony, right? So they bought Nokia for $10 billion. Flop gap. They missed the boat on social media. They spent $26 billion to bought LinkedIn. They missed the boat on cloud. They created Azure. So the first thing he said is that I want to fix the culture of the company, not the products. That everybody has good ideas, right? So I say when you go, degree आपके पास है, लेकिन the more curious and adaptable you can be, sooner you can move on. Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. That was a very enlightening session. If you could just again hold on for a minute, we would just like to pass on a token of appreciation to you.
So we would like to really thank sir for taking out that time. It was very, very relevant. I thought this is something that should be passed on to students, and we will try and keep having more people come to you and talk to you. So thank you very much for being part of the event today. Many of